about 1 minute. All right. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start with some introductions while people are joining, and so we can get started in the interest of time. So welcome everybody today. My name is Matthew McFall. I'm a senior private sector advisor with the Food and Agricultural Commodity Systems team at UNDP, the FACS team. I'm going to let my colleagues introduce themselves. I'll go with Greta first.
Thank you, and hi everyone. My name is Greta Ellero, and I work together with Matthew in the Food and Agricultural Commodity Systems team in UNDP, and I'm a Program Coordination Associate Officer. I will pass it to my colleague Lara from UNEP.
Thanks, Greta. Yes, hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Lara Jacob. I work as a environmental social governance program manager for the climate finance unit within UNEP.
Great. Thank you. And so just to note that this workshop is being organized through the Food and Agricultural Commodity Systems community, the FACS community, and we are recording it, and we can share the recording afterwards. I think we do have French interpretation available. My colleagues can confirm if there are any issues, but we should have French interpretation available through, and you can access that through your Zoom interface. And for anybody who only speaks French, could you please note that in the chat box, as this will be important later on when we break out into smaller groups. Go. Okay. All right, so next slide. So on the screen today, you can see today's objectives for the workshop. So we will introduce the Value Beyond Value Chains Toolkit, which provides a conceptual framework and practical guidance for companies and financial institutions to work with governments at both national and subnational levels to influence the enabling policy environment for sustainable agriculture production. We'll also discuss how public-private collaboration can drive more sustainable agricultural production, and through some interactive polling questions, group discussions, and case studies, we hope you will get inspired by some examples and ideas around effective public-private collaboration and be able to apply these learnings and guidance in your own work. So here's an agenda for day one. Doing welcome and introductions. We will present the guidance materials for the Value Beyond Value Chains. Then we will break out into smaller groups of about 4 to 5 people for a discussion question. And during the presentation, we'll also have a poll, which I'll talk about in a minute, to keep everybody engaged and interactive. So after the group discussion, we will have a short 5-minute break, followed by a report back on those groups, a plenary discussion. Then we'll have a presentation on a case study from our colleagues in Uganda. And then we will have some period for individual reflection with a few questions, and then further discussion to close for day one. So we are organizing these workshops as part of a set of training activities under the Food Systems Land Use and Restoration Impact Program, or FOLR for the acronym. And you can click on the link at your leisure to read through the program and all the different projects involved. So these workshops are most relevant or designed for those engaged in or interested in engaging in the 27 country projects under FOLR, which is funded by the Global Environment Facility and led by the World Bank. So participants that are here today include companies, country project teams, and other stakeholders who are interested in learning more about potential partnerships and collaboration opportunities for improving agricultural production across these 27 countries. This training is also being offered, as I mentioned, as part of the FACS community. So the material is beneficial and hopefully of interest to those outside of FOLR who have joined. And you're welcome to follow up with us to learn more, suggest any additional workshops or trainings, and please do join the FACS community so you can stay up to date with all the latest events and share knowledge with other practitioners. And before we get into the presentation, I just wanted to take the opportunity to remind everybody that this is a 2-day training. And so it's important that everybody attend both days if possible. Because today we are presenting the what and the why in terms of engaging beyond individual value chains in public-private multi-stakeholder collaboration initiatives. And so tomorrow we'll go into more of the how in terms of practical guidance for companies of different sizes, different ambitions, different parts of the value chain, and different scales of engagement. So we encourage everybody to participate actively throughout today, particularly during the breakout rooms where we will divide into smaller groups for discussion. We'll also have, as I mentioned, a couple of Mentimeter questions during the presentation for all participants to answer. And we'll also have a Google Doc, which I think Greta is going to share the link to, where you can post questions and comments throughout the workshop. And also, if you have any other questions, please do post in the chat and we can bring them up for discussion during plenary. If there's any clarifying issues during the presentation, you can ask, but I think in the interest of I'm not sure how many people we have, but because we have so many people, it's easier to do it in the chat. All right, to get started, Greta, I think we're going to share a Mentimeter poll to gauge some initial thoughts on some of the key challenges around public-private partnerships.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much, Matthew. I hope you can see my screen. And I invite you, everyone, to go to www.menti.com and enter the following code. We will just do a short Mentimeter to get to know each other and to do a sort of ice break. I'll just give you, great, I can see already one person who has joined. Let us wait, let some more people join. You can do it with your laptop, or you can also join through your phone. Four people. Or if it's easier, you can also type your answers in the chat, as you prefer. Let's wait until at least 10 and then we can start. One more, come on. So, yeah, great, 11. So let's start. So the first question we would like to ask you is, where are you joining from today? Let's see. Switzerland. I'm currently in Italy. My colleagues are from Canada, from Portugal. Great. We have Nairobi, Brazil, Singapore. Oh, wow. We have representatives from basically all the different continents. That's great. Liberia, Sweden, Mozambique, United Kingdom, Uganda, USA, Cameroon, Ghana. Great, thank you very much. Second question. Which sector do you represent? Public sector, private sector, an international organization, a national organization, civil society, or other kinds of stakeholders? International organizations, private sector, other, national organization, anyone from the public sector or the civil society? Not yet. Good, so we have quite a large representation from international organizations. Let's move to the last question. What are you expecting to learn from this training today? You can write 1, 2, or up to 3 words. Learn, yes. New ways to work with the private sector, validate the BBQ approach with stakeholders, practical tools, I don't know. Anyone else? How to improve the relation between the private and public collaboration, to learn about tools related to the value beyond value chains, understand how to deal with public-private partnerships. The magic approach, I hope so, that will lead us to engage more the private sector. Yeah, knowledge management of the topic. Great. Wonderful. Thank you very much for all your contributions, and I wish you to enjoy this training. And now, Matthew, back to you.
All right, thank you, Greta. All right. So why do we need to transform the way that agricultural commodities are produced? So this may not be news to most of you as experienced practitioners, but I'm going to go through some of the different issues of the environmental and social challenges that are threatening food production globally, especially in tropical commodity producing landscapes and supply chains. So climate change, agriculture and food systems are a major greenhouse gas emitter, but are also obviously susceptible to the impacts of climate change. It's a driver of biodiversity loss and pollution, freshwater scarcity challenges. The majority of global freshwater withdrawals are for agriculture, and the water is only replenished around 60% of the rate of extraction. There's issues of land degradation, particularly if we're looking at the Sahel and in African countries, which may be relevant to colleagues here. Deforestation, human rights issues, soil erosion, and then producer poverty. Agriculture is the economic engine of many developing and emerging countries. Over 200 million smallholder farmers operating in commercial supply chains, up to 139 million households worldwide, below the median poverty line. and many in extreme poverty. So obviously there are numerous challenges and risks involved, but overcoming these systemic challenges can offer huge rewards and opportunity. So agriculture has the potential for climate change mitigation. It has opportunities for biodiversity conservation. There are, livelihood issues that can be improved through increasing productivity and security, and protecting crucial ecosystems and natural resources can improve the performance of ecosystem services and other socioeconomic benefits. So I think most of this is fairly familiar to many of you. So why should companies and financial institutions engage what we think of as beyond their value chain with governments and in multi-stakeholder initiatives? So for companies and financial institutions, inaction carries both short-term and longer-term risks. Rapid action to address sustainable production can protect revenue and reputation while ensuring a stable operating environment. Some of the operational risks include brand and reputation concerns related to, activism around deforestation, negative environmental impacts, and labor and human rights challenges. So these are increasingly being exposed in campaigns that targets retailers, manufacturers, traders, producers, and financiers and investors of companies that are contributing to these challenges. This can cause major damage to brand reputation, leading to loss of demand or investment or employee talent, undermining business stability, reputation, future growth, and opening up companies and financial institutions to grievance processes through mechanisms like the OECD complaints mechanism, campaign organizations like Mighty Earth or Greenpeace, as you're well known. They issue regular reviews of company performance, and these receive much attention in the international media. And in terms of the financial institutions, banks can be targeted through campaigns such as Bank Track through the Dutch NGO Profundo. There's issues around license to operate. So markets and trade blocs are building tougher legislation and regulations for commodity imports. Many of you are familiar and aware of the upcoming EUDR regulations, which my colleague Greta has been leading a learning series on over the past year. So please do reach out to learn more about that if you're interested. And so, yeah, that's from the EU, but the UK and the US are also introducing import regulations with environmental and social requirements. So any of the commodity supply chains linking into exports to these countries could have potential issues around license to operate. And then, of course, there are supply chain disruptions, supply security challenges related to crop failures due to land degradation, climate change, and any of the different environmental impacts we went through before, which can lead to disruption in the ability to actually grow and source these commodities. Climate change is also a systemic risk, and transformation in the agriculture sector is key to meeting the Paris Agreement goals. Global productivity in agriculture has already declined by over 20% since the 1960s as a result of climate change, and is expected to continue declining, with yields to decline most severely in tropical countries, particularly in climate-sensitive crops such as cocoa and coffee, which are key to national economies and regional stability. So there's issues around ecological stability, commodity-driven deforestation, and unsustainable farming practices are rapidly degrading and destroying ecosystem services, which societies and economies depend on. Pollination-dependent crops, again, such as coffee and cocoa, are valued much higher than crops that do not need pollination, but overuse of pesticides is decimating pollinator populations around the world. And then livelihood damage and food insecurity challenges. This is particularly acute in the last year or two, given the Ukraine war and challenges around food imports. So increasing crop failures and declining productivity threaten livelihoods of producers globally and contribute to this growing food insecurity and dependency on imports. And so the land degradation needs to be reversed, and this is in light of global food demand expected to increase by 50% by 2050. So a number of systemic risks as well as the operational challenges I noted. So a lot of these challenges are difficult to overcome. Commodity supply chains are extremely large and complicated. Multiple factors interact to create perverse incentives for unsustainably produced commodities. So these are challenging for individual companies or financial institutions to address on their own. A number of these, I'm not going to read through all of them, but you can see the screen. And I think we will have a Menti activity after this. So let me go through these briefly. So we have different legal and policy environments that create legacy regulatory challenges. Subsidies to unsustainable production practices in many places create perverse incentives. Many investors and traders are still prioritizing short-term return over long-term investment in sustainability and resilience. Traceability is a major challenge, especially all the way back to farms. And this is actually one of the reasons that looking beyond your value chain at landscape or jurisdictional approaches can be quite beneficial and important, given the challenges of traceability all the way back to the farm level. Uncertified and illegal products can still get into the supply chain, and there's also the sort of overarching challenges around illegality and corruption. Technical training to farmers or financing conversion to sustainable production is expensive, and oftentimes there's also limited data on the business case for some of the more sustainable production practices for commodities, which may make companies or FIs reluctant to take action. There's also the potential challenge of buyers and consumers not prepared to pay a premium for more sustainably produced products. Ideally, there wouldn't have to be a premium, but that would depend on a level playing field, which we will get into soon. And then just low market penetration of sustainable commodities. So there's lots of remaining opportunities and markets for unsustainably produced commodities. So in light of this slide, I think, Greta, do we have another Menti we can introduce?
Yes. So let me, you can stop sharing your screen.
Okay.
I will share mine. So we have one question for you, please. I believe if you already you are connected, I see there are already 13 people connected. So I believe 14. Let us wait a few more minutes. We have a ranking question based on what Matthew just explained. To hear your view, please rank the following drivers of unsustainable agriculture production based on your experience. I hope you can see the text is quite small, but the first answer is differing legal and policy environments, incentivizing of unsustainable production practices such as subsidies, prioritizing short-term return over long-term investment in sustainability. Traceability is difficult and costly. Illegality and corruption. Technical training to farmers on sustainable practices is costly. Limited business case for sustainability. Consumers not prepared to pay a premium for sustainable produced commodities, and there is a large market for unsustainable produced commodities. Please take your time to rank these these drivers. Some answers are popping up. Prioritizing short-term return. No, the first driver is there is a large market for unsustainably produced commodities, but also prioritizing short-term over long-term investment and incentivizing unsustainable production practices. These are the main drivers, in addition to also illegality and corruption. Good. Thank you very much for your answers. Back to you, Matthew.
So Greta, what was the top one? I couldn't see it.
Yes, sorry. So the first one is the prioritizing short-term return over long-term investment in sustainability.
Okay. That's a good segue into the next slide, which my colleague Lara. Let me put back up the screen.
Thanks, Matthew. And I think before I delve into the kind of relevance for financial institutions and the drivers here of unsustainable practices, I just wanted to take a step back and emphasize why this approach and this sort of training is relevant not only for financial institutions, but particularly corporates and the program management units of FLUR who are joining us today. So this is really about looking at different modalities for engaging the finance sector in your countries. Finance sector engagement is critical to enable private sector financial flows through the development and deployment of products for sustainable land use. And so, in the Mentimeter, we saw the issue of subsidies and incentives as prioritizing quite high. So, obviously directing the flow of capital to sustainable land use practices is really key here. And what I would like to emphasize is that this is really a journey that starts with financial institutions having a sound foundation of risk management and eventually possessing the technical capacity to be able to develop financial solutions. So this session will, later on in day 2, will allow the different stakeholders, the program management units and the corporates, among others, to better understand how the FI approach or engagement with financial institutions can enable the facilitation of private sector financial flows. And my colleague Matthew did a brilliant job of outlining the key risk drivers of unsustainable commodity production. And similar to those faced by corporates, the banking sector, investors share a lot of the same risks because they're exposed indirectly through their clients or their investee companies. So this is sort of the link with the finance sector. And, some of the key trends that we've noticed over time is that we've been able to engage with the finance sector initially based on reputational risk. So Matthew mentioned Profundo and BankTrack, and if it's a very serious issue, then the OECD complaints mechanism. And what we've noticed over time is that reputational risk is diminishing. It's become less and less important. And what's at the forefront now for financial institutions is operational risk, systemic risk, looking at the very real impacts, whether it's climate risks and the issues of having their assets stranded or potentially impacting their portfolios through credit defaults by their clients. So it's really starting to hit home in terms of their bottom line. Really, against this backdrop, as we have global demand for commodities rising, this is sort of leading to deforestation. But then, to sort of counter that, we have responses in the market, such as, the regulatory / legal, the market responses and societal trends are actually moving towards deforestation-free finance. And so this is really starting to put a lot of pressure on financial institutions to come up with these sort of concrete measures for responding to sustainable land use practices. Thanks, Matthew.
Thanks, Laura. So as you can see, the drivers that we have been mentioning are quite challenging to overcome, and in large part due to the complexity of global supply chains. So these drivers related to policy financing and market demand, posing major challenges for those seeking to improve sustainability in their value chains. So tracing back to farmers can be very costly and difficult, as we mentioned, and I think a lot of the topics covered with the Menti poll are due to, in large part, complexity. And so transforming the commodities sector towards sustainability will require collaboration and coordinated action to address barriers across different parts of the supply chain at different levels of governance. So engaging beyond value chains offers a key opportunity for companies and financial institutions to help accelerate this transformation. And so to drive this transformation, companies and FIs need to think beyond their value chains, looking at issues across landscapes and jurisdictions. So for improving supply chain management is necessary but insufficient for solving the challenges around sustainable agricultural production. So many of the issues that need to be addressed are not under the control of a single producer, a single mill or aggregator or actor in the supply chain. Addressing these issues requires action from multiple actors in a landscape, including government, local communities, producers, civil society organizations, and companies, requiring collaborative approaches within production landscapes. Over the past, let's say, 10 to 15 years, many large agribusinesses, buyers, companies, and FIs they've focused on sustainability commitments by creating global frameworks, such as the New York Declaration on Forests, and developing sectoral sustainability standards, such as the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil, and creating common frameworks for action. One example is the accountability framework. There's also been a focus on improving supply chain management through implementing sustainable sourcing policies, mapping supply chains and tracing products through supply chains, implementing certification systems, paying premiums for certified products, and making purchasing commitments. And then there has been support for farm organizations through farmer training, increasing access to finance, replanting, and certification. However, with a few notable exceptions, most companies do not have a clear understanding of how they can collaborate with governments to create stronger enabling environments for sustainable production. So the enabling environment remains unaddressed, which is kind of in between this landscape to national scale you see on the slide. This is all the more true for smaller companies and for those who are perhaps early on in their sustainability journeys. So what value does engaging beyond value chains create for companies and financial institutions? So addressing the enabling environment raises standards across the board. So in the current reality that we've described, most situations, they create what we call islands of best practice, where companies who are at the forefront of sustainability, they risk being at a commercial disadvantage to those who are merely doing the legal minimum and the basic requirements of laws. So production standards in some areas and in individual supply chains are improved, but the bad practice is pushed elsewhere. And underlying environmental and social issues remain unaddressed because overall adoption of good practice remains low. So what we need is to level the playing field by raising standards across the board. Companies working together with governments to create stronger laws and enforcement of higher minimum production standards can create a more level playing field for all companies. This can lead to sector-wide capacity building and transformation across entire regions, landscapes, and jurisdictions. The value beyond value chains framework that we are introducing is quite aligned and similar to landscape approaches and jurisdictional approaches that have been adopted across many commodity geographies in Southeast Asia, in West Africa with cocoa, and in South America. So I think it's quite complementary to those approaches, and we'll get into a little bit later kind of the synergies and the relevance. So get to the next. So collaborating to lift the floor, or level the playing field as we're calling it, supports long and short-term priorities. So in addition to reducing operational and systemic risks that companies might face, engaging beyond your value chain can increase access to finance, reduce costs, and improve reputation. It can create a supportive policy environment, improve the resilience of sustainable production landscapes, increase visibility and leadership, improve and build a trusted reputation with key stakeholders, and increase investment in shared costs. And I think, Greta, do we have one more Minty?
Yes, exactly. Yes. So let me show again the link to join Mentimeter. This is the last one that we ask you to respond. So I will give you 1 minute to join again Menti. In case my colleague Alexandra or Philip will post also in the chat the code to enter and some indications. So the question is the following. From your perspective, what is needed for further encourage companies and governments to collaborate to lift the floor? Based on also what we heard from Lara and from Matthew, what's your perspective? I'll give you some minutes. Capacity building. If you want, you can also write your answer in the chat if it's easier. Incentives. Showing each party what is in it for them will drive them towards participation, clear roles and responsibilities. What else? Public and private expenditure review. Again, capacity building, inclusion of all different actors, re-establishing the trust, if I'm not mistaken, capacity building, incentives measures, legal requirements for sustainable sourcing. Companies need to be more engaged from their heart, and governments need to be more engaged in doing inclusive policies. Third, incentive for companies and governments, especially linked to NDCs linked to SBTs. Great. Thank you for participating in the poll. And yeah, if you want to still provide your view, feel free to do it in the chat. Thank you. And back to you, Matthew.
Thank you, Greta, and thanks everybody for participating. So just to reiterate in further detail from the previous slide and from the Menti, so collaborating to lift the floor supports long-term and short-term priorities. Companies or financial institutions can share transaction costs with partners and benefit from increased investment in sector development and co-financing or donor funding. That's very important in the context of the FOLR program. Relationship building with internal and external stakeholders, alongside reputation as a sustainability leader, will increase trust and loyalty from investors, suppliers, buyers, and consumers, improving market competitiveness and business resilience. I think becoming a global thought leader, developing increased visibility around improved reputation and sustainability is another benefit to collaboration, and improving the resilience of sustainable production landscapes, as we mentioned, will lead to greater resilience and risk reduction against all the systemic and operational risks we noted, and creating a supportive policy environment. Companies and financial institutions can work with governments to build stronger legal and regulatory frameworks where they operate, creating a better environment for doing business and investing for the long term. I think I often think about the value beyond value chains idea. Basically, is instead of thinking of the kind of more negative and corrupt intent that we often see from the private sector towards governments, lobbying for, lobbying corruptly and for kind of poor practices and just based on their individual interests. It's more, it's turning lobbying on its head, so to speak, into thinking about lobbying for good. You might think of in terms of improving the overall policy enabling environment. Not only helps the individual companies who are engaging in governments, but it improves the whole sector. And it's not about competing on who's more sustainable or who can get around different laws or whatever. I think it's quite important to think about it, kind of turning that notion on its head. So that's how I like to think about the idea.
Matthew, may I interject here?
Laura, yes, go ahead.
Thank you, because I think that's a really important point here, that I think for financial institutions, it's really collaborating around pre-competitive topics in a way that will have impact for the entire sector. So indeed, it's sort of moving away from the negative connotations of, collusion and lobbying, but, working in a multi-stakeholder fashion to raise those standards. And I think in sort of one of the slides you've mentioned here around investments and shared cost, I think that was the very first bullet point. It's a particularly salient point for banks and for investors, because financing the transition from conventional to sustainable land use practices, particularly for commodities, comes at a great risk. So, oftentimes we see financiers sort of backing away from the sector to say, we can't touch these types of innovative solutions because, it's too risky. The projects are not bankable. We don't have enough data. We are not sure if we can get the repayment, so there's sort of a high risk of default. And then for investors, it's maybe low return on investment. And so I think the collaborative aspects of working with governments to co-finance some of these approaches, working with NGOs on technical capacity building is so critical here, for this explicit purpose of investment and sharing costs. So sorry to interject, Matthew.
No, thanks for great points. I wanted to just highlight here also that companies and financial institutions are increasingly already moving in the direction of landscape jurisdictional approaches, working beyond their value chains. And the Tropical Forest Alliance, CDP, and ProForest have recently released a couple studies around the kind of highlighting the different engagements that companies are participating in with governments in these different commodity sectors, and the kind of the why are they doing that? Basically, going through interviewing companies and presenting findings on what is driving their participation. And in terms of cocoa, some of the findings were that companies are looking to comply with commitments they've made, looking at positive collaboration and action on their supply chain or value chain, looking at long-term sustainable sourcing and attracting additional funding, reducing emissions from land use change. They've all made many climate-related commitments, emissions commitments. And then in terms of cocoa specifically, companies have been prioritizing investments in initiatives with enabling environments that include local operations and capacity, neutral facilitation, government programs, the presence of other companies in local sustainability programs. I think that gets to kind of the catalytic effect of companies participating in these types of approaches, and then just opportunities to affect change. For palm oil, the findings were that companies are engaging in these approaches to avoid deforestation and conversion, to include smallholders in sustainable palm oil supply chains. In order to improve and support smallholders, I think the working beyond value chains and in a landscape or jurisdictional approach is much more conducive to that support, as opposed to looking at an individual supply chain where major land concessions and actors are more likely to be present, and then opportunities to engage local governments and support policies, and just to improve traceability. So I think that the rationale is quite strong for engaging beyond value chains. Companies are already doing it, and it's a way actually for many companies are seeing it as a way to reduce risk and improve long term. So I just wanted to share that, and please feel free to look up these studies. I think they are releasing the final versions later this year. Okay, I think now we are going to move into, you guys can stop listening to me and Lara talk, and I think it's time for everybody else to have their chance to participate. So we're going to do some breakout groups, And I think we have one simple discussion question for the groups. Greta, I don't know if that's going to go in the chat or on the screen. Let me stop my share.
Yes, thank you, Matthew. And yeah, you will be divided in 3 to 5 people into breakout groups. I invite you to participate in the breakouts and not leave us now, so that you can get to know each other, get to know your peers, discuss one simple but very challenging question, which I will be putting it in the chat, but the question is, what's your experience with public-private collaboration for sustainable agriculture? I will put the translation also in French in the chat now. So if we are ready, Philippe, if you can divide us in groups. We will reconvene in 15 minutes. Yes, if you can also, no, yes, that's all. I will put the question in the chat now. Thank you.
Sure thing. I'm sending you to groups now. We are grouping back in 15 minutes.
And first,
Bon, ça y est, je crois que la division a été faite. Vous êtes restés en...
Do you think there are some more people who still need to come back to the main session?
Yes, Greta, and I think there might be an issue because I was kicked out of the Zoom call when I left the meeting. So just to be aware that people might be logging back in.
Sorry about that, Lara.
Please.
I see everyone's been repealed to the plenary room. I don't know. It seems there was a bug with Zoom, but everyone should be joining back at the moment. Sorry about the inconvenience.
Right, so we're taking a brief 5-minute break, yes? Greta?
Yes, sorry, I was cut out from the meeting. Apologies.
Are we reporting back and then taking a break? Is that right? Sorry.
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
great.
Yes. So
Okay.
yeah, the floor is yours.
All right, we can take a few minutes here to report back on the breakout groups. I hope everybody had interesting discussions. I'll first ask for any volunteers who want to share things they discussed in their groups. You can raise your hand or just feel free to start speaking.
I can jump in, Matthew, until someone else wants to say something. So I spoke with Lana Fidel in our breakout session. Yeah, we had a good conversation around some of the challenges of multi-stakeholder initiatives in Liberia, and yeah, issues around timing, postponement of meetings, getting people together to sort of move an agenda forward is quite challenging at times. And so, oftentimes when you do want to sort of proceed business tends to sort of move faster than some of these multi-stakeholder initiatives that I guess there's sort of the notion that it's better to just get on with it and do it, show the proof of concept, and then have something to show for it. So we sort of mainly discussed the issue of timelines and sort of time horizons, and then we got into a more like philosophical discussion, or at least I did, around the sort of the issue of just transition, and how we need, in this sort of multi-stakeholder space, account for who is being I guess being cognizant of not leaving people behind economically in this transition to sustainable land use practices. Lana, I don't know if you wanted to interject here, or if you had anything to add or correct.
No, I think that sums it all. We did get philosophical, but that sums it up. Thank you, Larry.
Great, thank you. Anyone else to volunteer to report back from their discussion? Who can we call on? Well, because I was in a group with a couple folks, I'm wondering, Jean-Marc, are you interested in reporting back? And I think you were going to finish a question or a point you were making in our discussion. I don't know if you want to bring it up now in the larger group.
Thank you for putting me in the spot.
Yes.
Yes. Now we had a conversation with someone from the EPA again now, and so it was interesting to have the feedback from the public sector, actually, in the public-private partnerships, to have the idea of the feedback from the public sector. And it's why I also highlight that in this kind of partnership, one of our role at the GF is to support the public sector to be able actually to lead this kind of negotiation with the private sector, and to be empowered actually to promote the general interest, not only the interest of one sector or one value chain. And it's connected to another point that we discussed about very often when we talk about value chain, private sector, and agriculture, and it's visible on some of the slides. It seems a very linear process from production to markets. But we are interested not only in one value chain in a landscape, but we want also to operationalize the notion of resilient landscape. And resilient landscape in general doesn't mean only one product, one value chain, but the diversity of yield and products. And we need to provide better resilience, better resistance, both to the ecosystem and then to people. So these aspects are very important. One point we also discussed, building on that Matthew made earlier. Sometimes we are hearing different sounds. The private sector on a regular basis, meet in New York, for instance, and publish a declaration saying that they
excuse me, because we can't hear you well, and unfortunately our interpreters are not able to do the interpretation into French. There is an echo, so I'm just pointing that out.
Okay, I'm going to sorry, just one point. Very often there are some, reports and declaration from the private sector saying that they are doing very well. And Matthew highlighted that sometimes there are some reports from NGOs like Greenpeace or Friend of Earth publishing reports saying that the situation is not that good on the ground. Very probably the reality is in the middle, but it will be interesting to explore a little bit more this discrepancy between engagement and then perception on the ground, and find a way probably to better report on what's going on. Thank you.
I can try to summarize because he was in my group, but I think he was talking about, given that there's all these different NGO reports from Greenpeace, Friends of the Earth, Mighty Earth, those kinds of places, about the sort of negative impacts and practices from the private sector, to get and then there's also progress being made by the private sector. I don't know if this is exactly the point, but I think what I'm reflecting on is the fact that it's many of the companies we hear from also find it difficult to kind of get across the fact that they are doing better or improving their practices, they are engaging, but they still get dinged or they still get criticized by a lot of the NGOs, even when they are some of the better performing actors compared to other companies. So I think there's a balance that needs to be struck between giving credit where credit is due to some companies who are improving and making real efforts, with the continued pressure that needs to be put on the private sector more generally to sort of improve practices and engagement. So I don't know if this is exactly the point, but that was kind of my reflection. But I think in the interest of time, we will have more opportunity for discussion later today as well as tomorrow. But I think we're going to take a short break, and then we will be back to hear from our colleagues from the Uganda Coffee Platform.
Yes, thank you, Matthew. And you please don't leave Zoom. You can just switch off your camera, and we will reconvene in 5 minutes. So at 27. So we'll see you in 5 minutes.
Thank you. Or 9:25 even, because we were in the interest of time. So yes.
Thank you. And Caroline, are you back?
Yes, I am.
Good. Perfect. So let me just introduce you to our next speaker. So now we will have the chance to go directly into the field in Uganda and hear from the Uganda Coffee Platform their experience in terms of collaboration between private sector and government for enhancing sustainable agriculture production. I will leave now the floor to Caroline. Caroline, if you want, you can also briefly introduce the Uganda Coffee Platform before jumping into your presentation. Thank you very much, and over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Greta, for the opportunity, and greetings to all the participants who have made it here. So the Uganda Coffee Platform, it's a coffee platform. It's a platform that brings together stakeholders from coffee stakeholders from various walks of life, and that I mean coffee companies, coffee associations, community-based organizations working with coffee, any organization that is working with coffee. So this brings together all the stakeholders, and it provides a platform for them to discuss salient issues that emerge and that affect the coffee sector. So with joint effort, solutions are able to be sought after and then shared for proper operations within the members of the platform. So this is affiliated to the Global Coffee Platform. So basically, that is what I can say about the introduction and then the Uganda Coffee Platform. Okay. Yeah, thank you. So basing on the topic of discussion, our engagement with government and private has been at various levels, and we've had two strategies. So the first strategy being the national platform strategy, where we engaged government and developed the National Sustainability Curriculum. So in this, we worked with Uganda Coffee Development Authority, which is the regulatory coffee regulatory body in Uganda. And then we worked with Ministry of Agriculture, Animal Industries, and Fisheries. So we developed sustainability charts based on what I can say 4 pillars of sustainability. Ideally, we know there are 3 pillars of sustainability. That is economic, environmental, and then the social pillar. But for Uganda's context, through the discussions again at the platform level, we realized that one of the things that was really affecting our production was the fact that farmer organizations and institutions were struggling to thrive. So that is where members thought that a little more emphasis needed to be placed on the governance aspect. And so that is how we came up with what we call the 4 pillars of sustainability. The first one being economic, second environmental, then social, and finally the governance pillar. So we developed 32 charts that speak about sustainability and 1 facilitator's guide that guides the facilitator on how to conduct a training. And this was geared towards the coffee sector having harmonized kind of information that we are using to speak to the smallholder farmer in Uganda. Because if you're in the same country, then we should be speaking the same language as we reach out to the smallholder farmers. So this process involved a series of consultative meetings and then review meetings, because of course we're working with a designer, a developer. So there was a lot of back and forth. It is a time-consuming factor. It is a time-consuming process. Like one of the members raised a concern and said it is time-consuming, but it was something that was really worth having. And after developing the charts and then the facilitator's guide, we did the training for what we call the master trainers. And these are still staff that are affiliated to Uganda Coffee Development Authority. So the master trainers would then go ahead to train what we call the PCDS, the Parish Coffee Development Advisors. And these are the ones that would roll out the actual training and deliver the actual training to the coffee farmer. So besides training the Uganda Coffee Development Authority staff, we also engaged district local government officials, and we trained 107 district local government officials. Why? Because the UCDA staff are basically focusing on the coffee crop, but the DLG staff, the district local government staff, they serve all the crops within the district. So we felt that it was so important to have the coffee-specific master trainers, but also the district local government staff receive this kind of training, because either way, they also provide support to this smallholder farmer who is growing other crops, but mainly coffee also as a cash crop. Yeah, probably you can go to the next slide. And so in that photo, maybe before you move, we see one of our staff on the previous slide. One of our senior field officer is called Andrew Magombe. And at the table there, you can be able to see the chart, and those are the UCDA and local government staff that were being trained in one of the sessions. So let's proceed. Okay, and so that was the first strategy, the platform strategy, where we had to train the government officials and master trainers. And now the second strategy came in under what we call the Collective Action Initiative. We are implementing a program known as the Collective Action Initiative. I'm sorry, there's background noise. There's something happening outside. We can't control it because there are several offices around here. But under the Collective Action Initiative, we were able to establish what we called agroforestry working committees, because the agroforestry component was to serve a purpose of restoring degraded landscapes, but also building farm resilience at plot level, whereby we're working at improving the farm level microclimate, and the primary factor would be supporting farmers to plant shade trees, recommended coffee shade trees, and then also that those that had probably some extra land to plant other agroforestry species. because much as the farmer is growing coffee, they do not eat coffee. In the coffee farm, they will need bananas for food security. They will need cover crops like beans still for food security. So we formed what we called an agroforestry working committee. In the breakout room where we were, I was sharing with the members that the most important thing is being strategically aligned with the country's legal frameworks and policy frameworks. It makes life easier when what you're trying to push towards government is well aligned strategically with the instruments of the nation. For example, I'll speak about the Vision 2040. In this, there's a lot of policies that speak to this. We have the National Forestry and Tree Planting Act of 2003. This gives us the mandate. And so we are in position to reach out to several government offices because it supports any actor or stakeholder who is coming in to promote agroforestry or forestry at national, local level, whichever level it is. So whereas there could be resistance here and there, but the entry point is if there is a strategic alignment, then there is always a starting point for engagement with the local governments and with the local governments for any initiative that we would really want to push. So one of the lessons we have learned is that collaboration and engagement is, though it is time consuming, it is the only way to go. It is one of the ways we should go if we are to achieve sustainable development. We need to cultivate a spirit of patience as we work with local government officials, but we also need to factor in the time aspect as we plan, right from the planning session of whatever intervention that we are to undertake, than just rather complain that it is time consuming, so we do away with it. And then the other learning is that it's a very big vehicle for promotion, growth, and uptake of private sector programs. The materials we have developed, they have been pushed up easily by government, because when we have the executive director of Uganda Coffee Development Authority standing among the stakeholders and talking about these materials, it is very easy for them to be pushed and then for them to be adopted by the masses. So it is the way to go. Despite the hurdles first, we have to navigate strategies of how to overcome, and one of them I've talked about, cultivating a spirit of patience, but also planning right from the start. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Caroline, for this overview. It's always very interesting to hear your opinion and your experiences. So is there any question for Caroline or comment? Also, if you think this experience could be replicated in your countries, yeah, we would be interested to hear also from you. You can directly speak if you want, or you can raise your hand. Good. So we have participant 7. Sorry, I can't see your name. So feel free to unmute yourself and speak. Thank you. If you are speaking, we can't hear you. You can unmute yourself.
Hello,
and,
hello.
Yeah, yes. Now we can hear you. Please.
Yeah. My name is Mohammed from Ethiopia. Ethiopia Coffee and Tea Authority. Are we right?
Good.
I think I thought our program started at 4 p.m. but it is started before 40 a.m. Are we right for joining this meeting? Maybe we missed
Yes,
something.
yes. Yeah, please.
Uh,
You can go ahead and also share your experience from Ethiopia then. You are welcome.
are we joining at the right time or we are late? But
Yeah. No. It's the perfect time now. It's the perfect time.
Okay. Another question. It's very nice presentation here from Uganda. Even if we get the chance, we can present something about Ethiopia. But it is I appreciate her presentation. I can continue later. Maybe I don't have any question for her. It is nice presentation for the beginning, I think.
Good. Do you want to share your experience from the Ethiopia Tea and Coffee Authority right now?
Yes.
Good.
Yes. I'm happy. Me and my colleagues bonsai joining this meeting, this training. Not meeting. I think it is training. Yeah. Thank you for having this nice meeting. In Ethiopia, the coffee sector is governed by government. Is on the national level. That's Ethiopia Coffee and Tea Authority. This sector has mandated for all production, marketing, all value chains is under the control of this sector, Ethiopian Coffee and Tea Authority. Development side, marketing side, also the regulatory is under the control of this government organization. Also, we have different associations, as my colleagues from Uganda said. We have Ethiopian Coffee Exporter Associations, only working on the exports. Also, we have national coffee associations. Ethiopian National Coffee Association is one national pillar. It includes supplier association, roaster association, producer association, also women's in coffee. We have 5 associations are coming to one national one. They have one umbrella association that is named as Ethiopia National Coffee Association. This is a big association established the last 3 or 4 months around. So we are working in the all. We have around 6 regions potential for coffee producing. 30% of our national population's life is based on coffee, directly or indirectly. It's about 25 out of 30 million people are life is based in coffee, only coffee, major coffee. So coffee is the first commodity Ethiopian export industry, from the first export commodity from agricultural products. So it is, I think, Ethiopia is the first commodity to earn better USD, foreign currency. So currently we are working. We have 15 years coffee strategy, 15. Also, we have 10 years government coffee plan. We developed 10 years plan. With that, we have 5 years also plan we developed already. Currently we are working on more in development area, because as you know, our productivity is less compared to other developed countries. Is about 9 quintal per hectare. That is more, not more. We need to work to get more than this one, because the developed countries are reached 19, 17, or 21, but we are less in productivity. So we are working on that. And the second thing, we are focusing on the coffee quality production for marketing. Our coffee is our coffee is a specialty coffee, most but we need to do more in the quality, from production to different industries. As we know, from first level processing industries, we have export processing industries, we have different value chains that affect the quality. We are working on that. So maybe we need some technologies. Some technologies are currently we are working on that to family-based technologies to introduce. Also, I think currently the women department is very good working on the coffee. We get some experience from abroad, and they were scaling up inside. Especially the women department has to be strong, and the coffee produced and managed by women are selling to the best price. So we are focusing on that. Also, per year we are engaged in participated in different international coffee forums, even internally in Ethiopia or in the abroad. Even this year, we planned to have the international coffee forum, AFCA. AFCA, I think, Africa Fine Coffee Association, IACO, Inter-Africa Coffee Organization. This year we have these two events. Even so, last week we had international women coffee conference in Ethiopia. That is the last week. So we are working on more, but I think we need to do a lot, because especially in the productivity, the quality. Even from last year, we started coffee training. We have a national coffee training center. We are training in the cupping, in the roasting, and the barista training. We have started already this one. Even we from last year, we have got some support from some donors. Already we started last year. We are already producing trained experts for private sectors. We have support for that. They need some skills, expertise in the cupping sector. We have trained. We started to train these users and for the purpose of private sector, I think. So we are working a lot, but we need to support more.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we are a little bit behind with the schedule. But now we will have another discussion where you can also jump in again and provide your comments again. So now, thanks a lot for this, for the time being. And now we need to move to the next session, which is a plenary discussion on a few questions. And I will now leave the floor to Matthew and Lara to moderate this one. Thank you again.
Thanks, Greta. Can we put the discussion questions in the chat? And we can send the link to the Google Doc, even if we don't spend the time to do it individually, but folks can still access it.
Yes. Yes, in the shared document, you will see the questions and also the translation in French, or I can also copy in the chat the French version.
Great, yeah. So we have, reminder, we have only about 5 to 10 minutes left, but we will be back tomorrow for further discussion and interaction. So Greta has put a few questions in the chat to spark any comments or reflections that folks have. I will go ahead and read them out, and then feel free to raise your hand or jump in. So where do you see the greatest potential for increasing private sector collaboration with governments? What do you see as the greatest barriers? How do you think this material could be most helpful under the Fuller program? And how can you imagine using the material or the sort of concept in your own organization or with partners? So we'll give a few minutes for reflection, and if anyone has any comments, please do chime in. Otherwise, we may have to start calling on people. So Actually, can I ask, I know we have many registrants from companies. Is it possible for anybody who's actually working in a company to chime in with their thoughts or in the chat? Yes, I see a raised hand. Go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, sir. I'm from Nepal. Coffee is Nepal is probability of more probability coffee production. Here are mountain area, but we are producing the more coffee in our country. But it's high value chance. So we are earning the some coffee production. Nepal actually data I have no, but I am agriculture journalist. While I reporting the in the field that time I went to that the coffee area, the coffee entrepreneur and other 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 traders. They on the more than more foreign currency foreign export the Nepal Germany and other country of Japan, China, also India. It's, we have more probability, but the government, but now our government not to provide the subsidized in our country, in our Nepal, Nepalese coffee production sector. So they are worried. Entrepreneur are worried, very worried. I we are why you are worried? We asking from journalist side. The government they didn't give the sufficient facility, so they are worried. Sometimes they are optimist. It's but we have more challenge, but we have the coffee in Nepal. In the high value coffee, there are two, three type of coffee. That, we can product high mountain, high range of the mountaineering area. Coffee production. Farmers who is engaging in coffee sector, they are very happy, but very happy. Only subsidies in technology sector, technical sector is a weak in our Nepal. Some after before previous 3 months ago, I met the foreign one Chinese traders. Chinese traders they want to copy supply from Nepal. They like very like. Why they like? There is the Himalayan range, high mountain range. Their quality is very good. The Chinese traders said. And sir, it is my only I give you information. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you for contributing.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we only have a couple minutes, so I think maybe we need to, unless there's any last questions, please raise your hand, but we're going to go ahead and wrap up for today. We can share the link to those who have registered for any additional reflections on your own time between today and tomorrow. I think just wanted to say we appreciate everybody joining from the various places around the world in varying circumstances on mobile phones or challenging internet connections. So we do appreciate attendance, even if you were challenged to hear some of the things or participate. So tomorrow, as we mentioned today, was about the what and the why in terms of collaboration between public and private sector. Tomorrow, we will go into more of the how with more detailed guidance for different types of companies, different sizes of companies, and different levels of government. So tomorrow is more about putting these ideas into practice. And I hope everybody can attend tomorrow as well. We will have an activity as well that can be done in smaller groups to try to think through some of these issues. Yes, please do note the time zones. I think there may have been an issue today. Alex has noted in the chat. Laura, I don't know if you had any final thoughts before we wrap, or Greta?
No, from my side, Lara.
Well, Mohammed from Ethiopia, I see your hand. Go ahead. You're on mute. We can't hear you. Go ahead if you can unmute, please. Okay.
Tomorrow at what time?
Sorry,
9,
Matthew, I had trouble unmuting, but
Hello?
yeah, I have
Tomorrow
no further issues.
Laura, just a second.
Sorry.
Mohammed, go
tomorrow
ahead.
at 3 p.m. At 3 p.m. or what time? Tomorrow our meeting starts.
It is indeed going to be 3 p.m. We do apologize for the translation mistake between time zones. We will be sending an update today as well.
Okay, thank you.
Laura, did you have a thought?
Oh, I just wanted to say apologies. I had trouble unmuting. Yeah, I don't have any further remarks other than I look forward to getting into a bit more detail tomorrow with everyone. Thank you for joining.
Great. Okay.
Thank you.